calculations is where we stopped. And we'll pick up with still looking at Abraham. And we're going to look at Sarah now. I got the wobbles. Verse 1, now Sarah lived 127 years, and these were the years of the life of Sarah. So she dies. Sarah is age 127. So what does that make Abraham? 137. He was 10 years older. What does that make Isaac? Sarah was 90 when he was born. 37. See, that's how you figure out ages in the Bible. But I do this in part. Isaac's 37 and not married yet, which is the next part after this. And Abraham lives to be 175. That's a pretty good amount of time after the hopefully love of his life has passed on. So just to give you a little sinking there as to that. Ages in verse 2, Sarah died in, anybody want to say that word for me? I didn't think so. It says that is Hebron in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. He rose from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger sojourning among you. Give me a burial site among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. Now it says give, but he really means I want to purchase. The sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, O Lord, you are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of graves. None of us will refuse you his grave for burying your dead. He rose, he bowed to the people of the land, the sons of Heth, and he spoke to them, saying, If it is your wish for me to bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and approach Ephron, the son of Zohar, for me, and that he may give, again, allow me to purchase, the cave Ek Machpelah, which he owns, which is at the end of the field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence for a burial site. Ephraim sitting among the sons of Heth, and Ephraim the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the sons of Heth, even of all who went to the gate of the city, saying, No, my Lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that's in it, in the presence of the sons of people, blah, 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 so you can bury your dead. Now, I always thought, man, he's just being generous. No, as I read, let's see if I can find it, I think it was in here, he was going to sell him the field and the cave, because he basically, if he only sold him the cave, he'd have to pay taxes on the field and the cave. See, nothing's changed, has it? So, yeah, here it is. It says he would be responsible for dues for the entire property if he sold Abraham only the cave, but not if he sold him the entire parcel, the field as well as the cave. So, it's not that he's just being generous, and of course he sells it, he's not giving. 12, Abraham bowed before the people of the land. He spoke to Ephraim in the hearing of the people. He said, if you will only please listen to me, I'll give you the price of the field. Accept it from me that I may bury my dead. And Ephraim answered and said, My Lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between me and you? So bury your dead. Now, for my calculations, that equals about 12 and a half pounds of silver. I don't know what the rate is today, but from what I've seen, 12 and a half pounds of silver then is kind of a steep price, unless he's buying a great, great big field. So what's that between you and me? Hey, you pay me premium and I'll give you the land that I don't use anyway. So, verse 16, Abraham listened to him. He weighed out Ephraim the silver, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, commercial standard. So Ephraim's field, which was in Machpelah, which faced Mamre, the field and cave which was in it, and all the trees which are in the field that were in all the confines of its border, were deeded over to Abraham for possession in the presence of all the sons of Heth before who went to the gate of the city. Now, they didn't go to courts back then. They didn't have courts like we do, and you go before the court maybe and make a transfer or purchase of property, but they would meet at the gate of the city, the elders of that city or area, and that's where official transactions would take place. The elders would serve as witnesses, and so that's what has taken place here. Now, might make note, of course, Sarah is buried there, but also Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah, Leah, and Jacob are all buried in this same burial site. They would bury them in caves, much like good possibility of how Jesus was buried, in a cave. They would put the stone in front to mainly keep people from robbing what might have been buried with them. But they would dress the bodies, they'd wrap them up, do whatever, and they would lay them on like a ledge that they might cut out. And the body, of course, over time would just decay and be nothing left but bones. And in and around places like Jerusalem, they'd go in after a number of years, they'd gather the bones, and they had these big tall jars, and they just put all the bones carefully down in the jars, because they have found in some caves jars full of bones. But then that meant where that person had been lying, they could put another body, and so it was kind of reusable. But that's how they did it way back when. So Abraham purchased this. Verse 19 says, after this Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field at Machpelah, facing Mamre, Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave that is in it were deeded over to Abraham for a burial site by the sons of Heth. So that's chapter 23, basically about purchasing a piece of property as a burial site because Sarah has passed, and it's where, as I said, a lot of the rest of the family members will be buried. So now we get into the long chapter of number 24. Now, verse 1, Abraham was old, advanced in age. I already said he's at least 137 and getting older. The Lord had blessed Abraham in every way. It says in every way. What might that be? What ways has that we know of, or might God have blessed Abraham? What do you think?
Lots of servants.
Health, servants. He's got wealth. I mean, he's measuring out umpteen pounds, 12.5 pounds of silver. He's got a lot of servants. You might recall, with Abimelech in Egypt, both times where he said, Sarah's my sister. They're taken in. Well, in order to appease Abraham and God, they're given servants. They're given flocks. He's got herds of sheep and goats and probably camels and maybe some horses mixed in there, or donkeys at least. So he is by all standards in this day and age, a very rich man. How did he get that way? God blessed him in every way. And yeah, I would say health-wise too, as Laura said, to live to be 137 is still going. He's rich. Verse 2, Abraham told his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all he owned, please place your hand under my thigh. You're going to make him swear, essentially. And I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live, but you shall go to my country, to my relatives, and take a wife for my son Isaac. So we know Isaac is at least 37 plus, to put it that way. Why do you think Abraham did not want Isaac to take a wife from the Canaanites? Who do they worship?
Idol.
They don't worship God. They've been good to Abraham. Abraham's been good to them. But they don't worship God. He still has family. We'll see who here in a moment. That evidently at least include God, we'll put it that way, in who they worship. But he doesn't want Isaac, his son, to marry a Canaanite. Perhaps Sarah also said, I don't want him doing that. So, verse 5, the servant said to him, suppose the woman will not be willing to follow me to this land. Should I take your son back to the land where we come from? Abraham said to him, beware that you do not take my son back there. God had promised him where they are. There was a chance if he goes back that he wouldn't return there. And it could break the covenant between Abraham and God. And so Abraham said, no, this is where he is to stay. Verse 7, the Lord God of heaven who took me from my father's house, from the land of my birth, and who spoke to me and who swore to me, saying, to your descendants, I'll give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. Who's Abraham trusting? God, right? He's going to send one of his angels. God's got it all arranged. Verse 8, but if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master. He swore to him concerning this matter. Then the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master, set out in a variety of good things in his master's hand, and he arose and he went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. So if Abraham is down here in what's modern day Israel, here's the Mediterranean Sea, he's down here, he's going back up into probably around, or if not into where modern day Syria is. So the land or city is known as Nahor in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, I just had it. Basically, it's the fertile land, and it's known as the land that runs between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. It's supposed to be a real fertile area of the world. So, he heads back to the city of Nahor. Verse 11, he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at evening time, the time when the women go to draw water. He said, here's his prayer, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I'm standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming to draw. Now may it be that the girl to whom I say, please let down your jar so that I may drink, and who answers, drink, and I'll water your camels also, may she be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac, and by this I shall know that you have shown loving kindness to my master. So that's a prayer that Abraham's servant is praying to God. So to me that says Abraham wasn't just one who says, well, I believe in God. Everybody else in my household can do whatever they want. He had everybody learning and knowing that there is one God. So, verse 15, it came about that before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. So this is essentially Abraham's niece. Isn't it a good thing you don't see too many, I guess that'd be what, second cousins married nowadays? And she came out with her jar on her shoulder, and the girl was very beautiful, a virgin, and no man had relations with her. And she went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. And then the servant ran to meet her and said, please let me drink a little water from your jar. And she said, drink, my lord. And she quickly lowered the jar to her hand and gave him a drink. Now when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water also for your camels that till they have finished drinking. Exactly what he had prayed as a sign, God to give him a sign, she does. So she quickly emptied the jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels, all 10. I don't know how much water one camel can drink, but I guarantee you it's a pretty good amount. Meanwhile, the man was gazing at her in silence to know whether the Lord had made his journey successful or not. You ever, say, God, may this be? And God does it, and you're still like scratching your head wanting to know if it's true or not. I read a story a long time ago about a guy that, people in the church have been asking him to join the church, and he said, I'll join if such and such joins the church. Such and such never attended church, blah, blah, blah. They had a revival. Guess who joined the church? He did. Anyway, that's how some people are. We say, God, do this. God does it. We still don't want to believe it. So he's there kind of like, is this the real thing? So verse 22, it came about when the camels finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrist weighing 10 shekels in gold. It's about a half ounce a shekel, I think. So that's pretty heavy. He said, whose daughter are you? Please tell me, is there room for us to lodge in your father's house? She said to him, I'm the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. Again, she said to him, we have plenty of both straw and feed and room to lodge. Then the man bowed low and worshipped the Lord. Again, Abraham taught him who God was and to worship God and God only. 27, he said, blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving kindness and his truth toward my master. As for me, the Lord has guided me in the way to the house of my master's brother. He's acknowledging what God has done. He's not saying, oh, how lucky I am. 28, the girl ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now, Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Hey, we're going to see that name later on, won't we? Laban ran outside to the man at the spring. He came about that when he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrist, some heavy-duty gold, shall we say, and when he heard the words of Rebekah, his sister, saying, this is what the man said to me. He went in to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels in the spring. He says, come in, blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside, since I have prepared the house and a place for the camels? So the man entered the house. Laban unloaded the camels, gave straw, feed, etc., and so forth. Verse 33, when the food was set before him to eat, he says, I will not eat until I've told my business. And he said, speak on, or he's told to go ahead and speak. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. Now, there's a good chance when he said Abraham, they knew exactly who he was talking about, because it was Nahor, which would be Rebekah's grandfather, Nahor's father, Nahor's brother. It would have been Laban's and Rebekah's uncle. And they may have heard about him. It's not like they were sending emails back or text messaging or FaceTiming or even been back on vacation. But they knew who he was, because family history was extremely important throughout Bible history. So it's not just another Abraham. They most likely knew exactly who he was talking about. I am Abraham's servant. 35, the Lord greatly blessed my master so that he has become rich. And richness was not measured by your bank account. It was more by your flocks, your herds, as well as silver and gold and other possessions that the person may hold, including slaves or servants. He's become rich. He has given him flocks and herds, silver, gold, and servants and maids and camels and donkeys. Now Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master in her old age, and has given him all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughter of Canaanites, in whose land I live, but you shall go to my father's house, to my relatives, and take a wife for my son. I said to my master, of course, suppose she doesn't want to. He says, if not, you're free from all this. Then jumping over verse 42. I'm jumping because you've just got so much repetition in this chapter of what's being said. So I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you will make my journey which I go successful. Behold, I'm standing at the spring. And of course, he goes on and says, the prayer. If the first one I see, and I ask for a drink, and she gives me a drink, and then she offers to water all of my camels, may this be the one that has been appointed for my master's son. So then verse 45, he goes on, he says, before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with a jar on her shoulder and went down the spring and drew. And I said to her, please let me drink. And she quickly lowered her jar, said, drink, and I'll also water your camels. 47, then I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Behuel, the Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him, and put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her wrists. And I bowed. All of these were like dowries. You don't see those nowadays, but it was also to show proof that Isaac, the husband-to-be, could take care of the wife-to-be. 48 says, I bowed low and I worshiped the Lord. Again, he's worshiping God, worshiping God, worshiping God. And bless the Lord, the God of my master, Abraham, who guided me in the right way, and to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. So he's giving all the glory to God through all this. Now think about this for a moment. Notice he says he came, had all the camels kneel down, and it was about the time where they come to draw water in the evening. Well, what if it had been about 4, 5, 6 hours earlier? He'd have had a long wait, or somebody else might have come along. So it's not just that God brought Rebekah at the right time. He brought Abraham's servant to that well at the right time. How's the song heard choir sing? God's an on-time God. It may not be our time, but he's an on-time God. He's always right on. So, verse 49, the servant still talking to Rebekah's family. So now, if you're going to deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me. And if not, let me know that I may return, that I may turn to the right or to the left. Laban and Bethuel replied, the matter comes from the Lord. So they're acknowledging God. So we cannot speak to you bad or good. Here's Rebekah before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. It came about, when Abraham's servant heard these words, what's he do? He bows himself to the ground before the Lord. Not their family, but before the Lord God. The servant brought out articles of silver and articles of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave precious things to her brother and her mother. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night. And then they arose in the morning and said, send me away to my master. But her brother and her mother said, let the girl stay with us a few days, say 10. Afterwards, she may go. It's like, we got to let all this sink in. We want to say goodbye. We got to throw her a bridal shower. We got to get her, pick out her bridal. Really, if it was your daughter, you'd say, wait a minute. Give me a few days, and to think about it. Unfortunately, verse 56, because it's not like I said, they can't just FaceTime one another, can't pick up the phone and call one another, and it's not an easy travel. I forget how many days I remember looking it up, but I forget that it would have taken him to have gone from down here all the way up to here. It was not just a couple of days. In fact, it might have been about a month because of the pace of travel that it took them. So, back to where I was. The servant brought out all the articles, verse 54, and he and the men who were with him ate and drank. And let's see. 10 days. Verse 56, and he said to them, do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master. And they said, we will call the girl and consult her wishes. Which is, we don't know how old Rebekah was. Remember, Isaac is 37 at least. Maybe she's 27. Maybe she's 17. Maybe she's even younger. And she's going to have to leave her family that all she's known, leave the area that she's known to go marry somebody. Scary, wouldn't it be? So, 57 says, we'll call a girl and consult with her. They called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. So, thus they sent her away, her sister Rebekah and her nurse and Abraham's servants and his men. They blessed Rebekah and said to her, may you, our sister, become thousands of 10,000s, and may your descendants possess the gate of those who hate them. Rebekah arose with her handmaids, and they mounted the camels and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and departed. Now Isaac had come from going to Ber-Lahai-roi, for he was living in the Negev. Now, they don't know exactly where that is, but the Negev would be southern part of Israel, down kind of desert-like. In verse 63, Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, he saw the camels coming. Now, he knew where they'd gone. He knew why they'd gone. 64, Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel. She said to the servant, who's the man walking in the field to meet us? The servant said, he is my master. She took a veil and covered herself. She wrapped not just her face, but really her entire body. Covered herself, and the servant told Isaac all the things that had happened, and Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her, and thus Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Now that last line is one reason I say he was somewhere close to this. By the time they get back, I'd say 38, maybe 39 years of age when they come together. So almost time. We'll stop there. Wasn't sure if I was going to make it through that entire chapter. But any questions or comments as far as what took place, Sarah's death, and arrangement of Isaac's wife, Rebekah? Yeah. Reading sections like that, I'm trying to point out, it's, God, I think part of that section is in there to show us how God works. Like I said, the timing was there. God, Abraham said, God's angel will go before. He did. They didn't necessarily have a roadmap where his servant could have said, okay, oh yeah, we got to make a right up here. Yeah. He followed. He probably knew the general direction. Did he know that there was a well there? Probably didn't. Probably assumed it because most cities had wells, especially in that region, for watering flocks and for people to get their water. And so it's amazing to see what God did. And remember, all this is heading up to Jesus, the lineage of Jesus, how this one and this one, all come together. So, anybody, any questions or thoughts before I do otherwise?